Today on the Q Agenda's Lively Gay Buzz Talk, reality check for reality stars as two big names on television get fired for making racist remarks.
Published writer and publicist to the stars, Howard Bragman, joins us today to chat about his life and Tinseltown. You don't want to miss it.
And we chat with the director and writer of the controversial award-winning LGBTQ film, The Cypher. All that and more right here on
The Q Agenda. Vanderpump Rules and Bravo executives announced the firing of 4 of their cast members recently, and 2 of them were fired for making racist remarks in the past about a former African-American castmate. Since then, both stars have admitted to being wrong and growing since those remarks were made. But today we're going to discuss how we feel about the network's decision to say, you gotta go.
I think it's like, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord
Split you.
Split you.
You can say
Exactly.
split you on
Yeah,
television.
I guess you can say split. Yeah, I mean, they both, they're very popular Bravo stars. And they were at this point, because I think they're like under season 10 or 11, making a big check. I mean, these were like, you know, like reality stars. And because that, I feel that term is like thrown around loosely. But they were real stars, and it came to bite them in the butt. And I think we're now at a time where there's zero tolerance in regards to remarks like this. But why is it now? And then now that this happened, are they gonna go back and review everybody else? Because this is not the first incident where this happens. And
Enrique,
MTV cleaned house, by the way, too.
Enrique, talk us through this, because I don't keep up with that as much as I should with this. So 2 of the stars were in trouble for tweeting past racist remarks and in hot water for that, and the other 2 were actually fired for calling the cops when they weren't supposed to, or they were making up a phone call to the police officers for a former African American cast member.
Well, the cop story is that Faith Hope, who was a former castmate, who was with them on the show, they didn't like her. And there was an announcement of some African-American lady that had tattoos that apparently had been committing robberies somewhere. And these 2 girls from the show, Stassi and the other one, I can't remember her name right now, they called the police on their castmates, even though they knew that it was not her, just because she was Black and she had tattoos. And they told the police that they knew where the thief was, and got this girl to like deal with all this drama of like, you know, now she has to explain herself and everything. This happened a while back ago.
On camera, Enrique?
They did it behind camera apparently, but there were tweets and there were messages sent, and then they admitted it on different podcasts that they talk about the incident. So cut to now that the whole Black Lives Matter movement is happening, Faith Hope opened up about it and said, this is what I lived and the kind of abuse that I lived, and it was all brought to the light.
Wow.
I don't know if you remember on their first episode of the Q Agenda, we also had Billie Lee, who was part of the cast of Vanderpump Rules. You did the interview, Victor. She also spoke about her as a trans person, her experience. It wasn't positive, I believe, right?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. And I think actually my stance on this, because I think, you know, being in LA, you meet a lot of people, and you meet a lot of people, especially me being specifically within the beauty community, there's a very big, people are always trying to expose. It's like, it happens in all industries, but like for some reason, like on social media in the beauty industry, it's crazy. So relating it to this story, personally, with the context that Enrique just gave, I feel like with the tweets, I would have felt that it would have been unfair to fire them personally, because I'm just the type of person that I think I've said crazy things, and I think that we're so quick to be like, you're a bad person, you're this, you're that, and then I almost always have to kind of sit here and think, I wouldn't want something that happened a decade ago to affect me because I've grown as a person. Now, that's not the case for everyone, but my opinion slightly changes with the story of them calling the cop, because I think, again, with everything that's going on, there's like a certain level of petty where it's like, it can be life-threatening. What if that wouldn't have gone?
Dangerous.
It's dangerous, exactly. So I think with that, I think they definitely deserve to be fired, especially since this was more recent. This was during the show's run. But when it comes to tweets from the past, I kind of have a soft spot because I was kind of reckless, and I think it's important to admit
Yes,
that.
exactly. But how much of that do you think comes with age? Like, so for me, like if it's because we're young and our brains aren't fully formed, maybe before 25, maybe then we could say, okay, this person was at this point in their life. But like, what if they were 30 or 35
No, they
or
were.
30
They
or
were
40s?
in their 30s.
Yes. So even though our culture has changed, I don't know that as far as like what's acceptable to say and or do or joke about. I don't know. I think it is a balance of who can be held responsible for what and when. But I honestly, if they're grown adults and they're saying stuff that they know they shouldn't be saying, I don't even know what to. I don't know.
I don't
what
know
to do
if
with that.
my opinion is enhanced right now because of everything happening, but I think we need to have a zero tolerance. I think there has to be a zero tolerance. There's no more time to joke about this. It's not a joke anymore. It's not cute. It's not funny. It's not acceptable. Once you put it out there, it's out there.
Yeah.
And there's no way you can pedal back from it.
See, you're wise because our generation, my generation, your generation does not know that. Don't you think? I think like, how is any millennial going to run for president ever in the future? Like,
And that's the thing. That's where I come in with this. I think that, you see, like I've admitted, I've said reckless things in the past. I think we have to get out of the, I'm gonna keep it quiet and hopefully it stays a secret. Like I think when times like what we're experiencing right now in this movement, I think it's big of people to come out and say, listen, I thought like this. I'm in a position where I can use my voice and say this is a problem because I've been a part of the problem. But I think when people wait to be exposed, I think that's why people are unwilling to forgive them, because it's kind of like you're sorry you got caught, not necessarily you're sorry for doing these things and just being a big person and admitting it. So I think that also changes the perspective.
Well, and we're also, right now, it's just a tip of the iceberg with this situation, with this story. So obviously, as the story unfolds, we'll make sure to, hear more about it and, what happens with this controversial matter right now with Bravo and reality TV in general. But when we come back, Howard Bragman is going to join us, so don't go anywhere.
Howard Bragman is one of the most influential voices in Hollywood. As a crisis manager, publicist, writer, and activist in the fight against HIV, he witnessed firsthand some of the most powerful moments in history unfold. Today, he is here with us to talk about his journey and the future as he sees it. Please welcome the wonderful Howard Bragman.
Woo! Welcome, Howard.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today. I have to start from the beginning. I want our audience to learn a little bit about you, where you come from, your journey into Hollywood, and as one of the biggest, most successful publicists in the industry. Let's start from the beginning. How were the origins of Howard Bragman and coming out? Can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, so I grew up in the garden spot of America, which is Flint, Michigan. And I was lucky enough my parents said you can go to any state school you want. And I was lucky enough to have the University of Michigan in my backyard about an hour away. And I went to the University of Michigan, which was considered very liberal. I didn't feel that liberal to me then, but in retrospect, it was much better than certainly a lot of places were. And over the past at least decade, I've been working with the university because they were the first university in the country to have an LGBT organization. It's called the Spectrum Center, and they were the first university to have anything for LGBTQI students on campus. So it's quite extraordinary, and they were quite progressive in the day. And after I graduated, I moved to Chicago, and I came home one weekend and I sat my parents down. And this was probably, 1978. So it was a long time ago. Wow. And I sat with my parents and I said, I wanna talk. And they said, yeah. And I said, I have something to share with you. And they said, what's that? And I said, I'm gay. They were kind of shocked. They had no idea. My mother cried, and I said, please don't cry. I'm happy. I have friends. I have a life. I'm very fulfilled. And my mother said, I think the most amazing thing a parent could ever say to a child, she said, I'm not crying because you're gay. She said, I'm crying for all the pain you had growing up that I couldn't help you with. Wow. And I'm just grateful to this day that I had parents that were like that. And later on, during the HIV crisis, my mother used to wear an AIDS ribbon everywhere. And if you made a gay joke about my mother, you were dead. But I grew up in a very nurturing family. When I was in Chicago, I started working for a small PR firm that was owned by two gay men. And I was out of the closet from the beginning, which was an act of rebellion in the late 70s. Just being out of the closet in the 70s at work. First I worked for a small magazine, then a small PR firm, and then I went to work for a big PR firm. People were not out of the closet then. And I had a friend in New York who was gay, who worked at this PR firm. And I said to him, I kind of have a vision. And he said, what's that? And I said, I'd like my own PR firm one day. And I'd like to be able to work on traditional clients and regular clients, but I'd also like gay clients too. And he's like, oh, that's never going to happen. And, you know, it did happen. And when I started my first PR firm in 1989, my first client was a young man named Joe Steffen, who was kicked out of the U.S. Naval Academy because he was gay. And he was pro bono. And it was written about in Randy Schultz's book, Conduct Unbecoming. And I guess the message there is you can create the life you want and the life you dream of if you have if you have enough.
Agreed, absolutely. It's been an incredible journey. But we have to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more from Howard Bragman.
And we're back with more from Howard Bragman. I'm so excited to have the first question because I got to know what you just said, how it relates to our current president, President Trump, who does not shut up, cannot shut up, seems to be in one crisis after another. What is your professional opinion on what in the heck is happening with President Trump's Twitter and his public life?
That is his brand. That was his brand going in. You can imagine if Hillary Clinton had been elected president and COVID had happened during Hillary's term and 1,000 people had died, it would have been the greatest tragedy of all time. And I assure you, the Republicans would have been going, oh my God, this is the worst president ever. 1,000 people died under her watch. Wasn't it ridiculous? And wasn't it horrible? And isn't she a disaster? You go look back at some of Trump's tweets, but it all goes with the branding going in. But if you look at some of the recent polling, it's catching up with him. And he still seems to have his base, which is mostly racist white men. But for the most part, people who are anybody who's of color, women who he had a lot of suburban women, they're falling off in droves from him. He's got his core, but everybody else is peeling away from him, and he's getting very desperate. In the last day, he started attacking the 75-year-old man who was pushed by the police. It was in upstate New York, I believe. The man who landed on his head and started bleeding, he said, oh, it looks like that was fake, and he exaggerated his fall. This stuff is just not playing with his base. When he talked about injecting bleach, things like that, he reeks of desperation, and even the hardest core Trumpies are having trouble. And the way he's handled the racial issues in this country, only 33% of the country is on his side in terms of that. I watch the polls very closely, and anytime Trump goes below 40%, you know he's got trouble because his base tends to be 40, 41, 42%. So even his base knows he's really sucking at handling this particular issue. So I believe in my heart of hearts there will be cheating at the polls. There was cheating this week in Georgia.
It's our Pride Month, and with everything happening right now with the situation with Black Lives Matter, and the world is a little bit of upside down right now with so many things happening. What is your message to our audience?
Our message is that the LGBTQI community has to understand our movement started with a riot. We have to stand up that a win for one community is a win for every community. We have to be there for other communities, and other communities need to be there for us. Okay? The African American community has historically had issues with our community, they really have to work hard, and we have to build bridges with that community so that, and a lot of it has been biblical, and we have to build bridges with that community, and we have to work harder to build bridges with that community because we are only going to succeed together.
I would love to pick your brain, but we are out of time. I hope to have you back. I want to thank Howard for stopping by. You can follow him on Howard Bragman on Instagram. And when we come back, we're going to look into a controversial rap LGBTQ film, The Cypher. So don't go anywhere.
Enrique had the opportunity to catch up with filmmakers Leita Solomon and Wes Akuobi about their controversial award-winning film, The Cypher. So let's take a look.
We are super excited to welcome Leita Solomon and Wes Akuobi from the film The Cypher. Guys, how are you doing? How are you dealing with this new normal?
Oh, it's it's good. It's something, but I would say probably we're okay. We're getting through it.
Yes, for sure, hanging in there. Very excited to be talking to you all, and thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Well, no, thank you for being here with us. Super controversial film. It's gotten so much success. I can't wait to jump in and talk about The Cypher. What motivated you guys to tackle this subject, which I believe it should be talked about? It's 2020.
Wes, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. Just as a person who grew up around hip hop my entire life, growing up in Queens, New York, and just being surrounded by that culture, I just was very sort of taken by hip hop's relationship with the LGBT community, especially as I sort of, as I would get older, come to realize that I identified within the community and didn't really see a sort of healthy intersection between those two. And so I really wanted to explore why that is and try to just kind of hold the mirror up to the hip hop community and the LGBT community as well, and just try to start this dialogue about queer rappers and, the fact that we don't really see too many of them in the mainstream. And so this film is about really kind of exploring why that is and exploring the hypermasculinity behind that, and hopefully we succeeded in starting a dialogue and getting into the subject.
I love how you portrayed the leading man, the way it was written. It was really heroic, and it wasn't a victim, and it was positioning a gay man as a leading man that was, to me, so surprising. Leita, how did you envision the character when you started directing the film or when you were storyboarding it, so that he wouldn't be, the usual way people pursue when they tackle the subject of LGBTQ, to break those parameters? Right.
So we had many discussions from the beginning in terms of what does Khalil look like? What is his energy like? And how, and especially because we had to kind of navigate through describing feminine or masculine energy and what does that even mean. But I think first off, what's so beautiful and specific about Wes's story is he's a bit more masculine presenting, if that makes sense. And so let's back up. During the casting process, it was important to find someone who is masculine enough to fit in this hyper-masculine environment, but also has that layer of vulnerability, and so that we can tap into his emotions when he's with his loved one, and we can see not only a physical transformation, but an emotional transformation of what does it look like when he's inside his home, in the privacy and in the safety of his own space, versus when he's outside and he's in the ring or he's in the battle, versus then the face that he has with his sister, which is the more family-oriented tie. And all three of those facets, we had to see that within our character.
Being such a specific theme and so taboo still to this day with rap and hip hop and, in the LGBTQ community, why do you think the film is so well received?
I think it's been well received because I think that it's kind of a difficult conversation to have, and I think that we were really willing to go to that place, and I think that I truly believe that not as many people are unwilling to have this conversation as it may seem. And I think that that's something that we really learned in the process of making this film, and just the people that came out for us and were a part of it and really gave their all to helping us make this. I spoke to so many people on and off set that were so moved and so sort of impacted by the story itself. Even though it's, you know, kind of a simple and contained story, I had so many people talk to the team and myself about, you know, how much they hadn't really thought about this kind of thing, and how much it was opening their eyes to the dynamics that exist in these different spaces when you introduce the queer identity into them, and how it's not always so warmly embraced, you know? So I think that it's been very interesting to see, especially in the Black community and the Black people that helped us with this film and that we're so connected to it. And I really feel like it's pointing to, my hope at least, is that it's pointing to a much more sort of accepting and understanding community. Just the confluence of the LGBT community and the Black community and the hip hop community. Like, I feel like we're moving towards a place where all of those things can be more harmoniously, you know, collaborative and existing with each other. So I think that that's been really the driving force of all of the emotional responses that we've gotten from the film.
We're lucky enough to have you guys on the show and have this beautiful film, because this is part of our content for our Pride Month. And I wanted to ask you both, what do you want the community to take as a message from this film?
What should we take that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would really like for the community and anybody who watches the film to take from it that, you know, being gay or being queer and however we identify does not necessarily put us in any kind of box. That does not mean that, you know, you are inherently like more feminine or you are inherently weak or whatever it is, like whatever the sort of labels that people are trying to attach to our identity, those things do not exist. Like, we don't have to exist within those confines. And just like Khalil in the film, like, we have every right and all of the freedom and hopefully the courage to show people that we are not one thing.
We want to thank Leita and Wes for joining us, and for more on the Cypher, you can follow it at the Cypher Film, and don't forget to visit us at latv.com. See you next time.